Hey YouTube, thanks for clicking this video. So you're looking at the Art Institute of Chicago. I wanted to come check out the Picasso exhibit and get some test footage on my new Osmo Pocket 3. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Also, on the website I found a page that listed all of the black artists currently on display, so I thought I'd go around, read the descriptions, have more of a guided tour if you will. So, happy you're here, let's go. The first black architect licensed in Illinois, Walter T. Bailey studied at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and spent his early career as a professor at Tuskegee University, a historically black university in Alabama. In 1922, he was commissioned by the Knights of Pythias, a black fraternal order, to design their national headquarters in Chicago's thriving Bronzeville neighborhood. When it was completed in 1928, the building was the largest and most significant in the country to be designed, built, and financed by African Americans. This terracotta fragment was recovered from the temple's Egyptian revival facade, a style which likely held great significance for the Black Knights of Pythias at a moment when many African American intellectuals looked to the history of Egypt as a source of cultural pride. Although the structure was demolished in 1980, the Pythian Temple remains an important part of the rich history of Bronzeville and Chicago's South Side. After studying painting at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Mississippi native Richmond Barthé moved to New York, where he achieved success as a sculptor. His works were exhibited widely by the Harmon Foundation, an organization that promoted African American artists and writers, and earned the praise of Harlem Renaissance critic Elaine Luck. Barthé, who frequently explored the expressive potential of the body's form, pose, and movement, modeled boxer from memory. Inspired by the famed Cuban featherweight Elagio Sardinez Montalvo, better known as Kid Chocolate, who Barthé said moved like a ballet dancer. In this work, Barthé conveys the boxer's immense strength and agility with lyricism and grace. Elizabeth Catlett made this sculpture early in her career, just after a formative period in Chicago. Its angular features and deep carvings demonstrate Catlett's confident abstraction of the human form. She was inspired by African art, which she saw as the precursor to modernist abstraction. After all, she said, abstraction was born in Africa. Catlett continued to build on these formal qualities through sculptures, prints, and paintings, developing an expressive, modern aesthetic to depict African American subjects. In this dynamic rendering of a musical partnership, Augusta Savage celebrated everyday people in her local community of Harlem. The two sculptures aesthetically respond to one another. The musician twists at the waist, throwing back his shoulders and head and lifting his wind instrument high in the air. The dancer likewise leans off his vertical axis, his arms bent close to the body, full of kinetic energy. Savage was an influential sculptor, teacher, and intellectual leader. Determined from childhood to become an artist, she moved from Florida to New York in 1921 and studied at the Copper Union. 2 years later, she won a scholarship to train in France, an offer later rescinded because she was black. Savage would go on to found her own school and also lead the Harlem Community Arts Center. Over a 5-decade career, Martin Puryear has devoted himself to exploring organic forms in various materials, but most often wood, creating suggestive, playful, and transformative forms anchored to our world. In Sanctuary, Puryear pairs a carefully fashioned block with wild tree saplings, celebrating the beauty of wood in both its natural and refined states. The sculpture looks like it's paused in the middle of an action, the wheel at its base threatening to lurch forward at the smallest touch. Whimsical and sophisticated, the piece balances a longing for stability with a need for change. An artist of African, Caribbean, and Irish descent, Lorraine O'Grady has mainly focused on representations of black female subjectivity, often through the lens of family, literary, and art historical narratives. Her work Miscegenated Family album is a series of diptychs, each containing an image of the ancient Egyptian queen Nefertiti paired with the corresponding image of the artist's deceased sister, Devania Evangeline O'Grady Allen, or members of their respective families. The physical resemblances between the individuals within any given diptych are sometimes startling. Both families, in fact, reflect the consequences of generations of cross-cultural exchange and interracial marriage. The son of a prominent minister of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Henry Ossawa Tanner was perhaps the most renowned American painter of religious works at the turn of the 20th century. After studying at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, Tanner moved to France in 1891 in an effort to escape the trenchant racism that limited his career in the United States. The Two Disciples at the Tomb depicts an event from the Gospel of St. John in which Peter and John arrive at Christ's empty tomb. Tanner grounds the scene in the figure's thoughtful expressions. Peter looks downward with a somber gaze, while John appears transfixed, his face bathed in a golden light that signifies the presence of Christ's Spirit. These teacups are rare examples of functional objects made by artist Sergeant Claude Johnson. Best known for carved figural works from the 1920s and 30s that depict the beauty and dignity of African American people, Johnson experimented with a wide range of media over the course of his career, including painting, printmaking, frame making, and ceramics. Here, he focused on geometric forms to shape and decorate his vessels, using contrasting semicircles and rectangles for the handles of his cups and abstract patterns, silhouetted figures, and musical instruments in the glazed imagery. Starting art classes at age 10 and graduating from the Cleveland School of Art, Huey Lee Smith became a painter of uncategorizable images, scenes of lone, enigmatic figures and bleak landscapes that are realist yet surreal, romantic and mystical. The artist linked the starkness of his imagery to his experience as an African American man, later recalling, "Unconsciously it has to do with a sense of alienation, and in all blacks there's an awareness of their isolation from the mainstream of society." In desert forms, as in many of Lee Smith's works, the isolation can also be interpreted as a universal statement about the loneliness that can be experienced by all of humanity. New York painter Norman Lewis began his career working in the social realist style. Around 1946, however, he started exploring a gestural approach to abstraction and became the only African American among the first generation of abstract expressionist artists. Although his work avoided overt representation, he still sought to address social concerns. The title of this painting alludes to the United States struggles and potential after World War II. With reference to lines from Walt Whitman's poem, Song of Myself, Lewis commented on his own time and the productive complications his socially engaged abstraction brought to American painting at this moment. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. Born and educated in Chicago, Charles White was one of the preeminent artists to emerge during the city's Black Renaissance of the 1930s and 40s. As a child, White sketched in the galleries of the Art Institute of Chicago and in high school earned a scholarship to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. White believed that art could be a force in promoting racial equality. "Paint is the only weapon I have with which to fight what I resent." In this, My Brother, White depicts a man with outstretched hands emerging from a demolished structure. The artwork comes from a 1936 novel about a rural white miner who, after a political awakening, joins the proletarian struggle against capitalism. In his depiction, White transforms the protagonist into a black man who breaks free from a mountain of rubble, a hopeful image of the possibility of social change. The first known African-American painter to gain professional recognition in the United States, Joshua Johnson had trained as a blacksmith before being freed by his enslaver and father in 1782. Johnson worked throughout the Baltimore area as both a portraitist and limner, someone who decorates manuscripts, advertising himself as self-taught in the city's newspapers. Among the more 80 paintings attributed to Johnson is this one of Elizabeth Betty and her daughter, both fashionably dressed. The child holds a brightly colored strawberry, a delicacy often featured in Johnson's portraits. Thanks for checking out this video. Let me know in the comments section what you thought of the Osmo Pocket 3 footage, and whether you like this kind of content in general. See you next time.